Hello everybody and welcome to the second in our series of Communities of Practice webinars. They're based around the 4Cs. I'm Sarah Waller and I'm a Programme Coordinator at Real Ideas, and I'm part of the Educating Differently team. And our 4Cs are creativity, culture, community and connection, and that they are at the heart of our approach around the recovery curriculum at the moment. And the aim is to really outline some ideas, some practical activity, but also to create a space really which allows us as educators and creatives within the cultural sector to explore some of those bigger picture ideas, and then how we can start to apply those ideas within school curriculums, allowing us to shape new ways of working. So, as I said, this is the second in our series of webinars, and following from creativity, which was a few weeks ago, ours today is going to explore the idea of culture, which is a huge task, I know, within an hour, and possibly quite perilous, but I'm pleased and delighted to be joined by some exceptional people today. We've got panelists right across our nation, so I'm very pleased to be able to introduce them to you. We've got Amy McGann, who is the Head of National Programmes at the Royal Opera House. We've got Helen Tiplady, who's the Deputy Creative Director at the Hall for Cornwall, and we have Chloe Hughes, who's the Programme Manager at the newly reopened museum in the Box. Amy, if I can just ask you to perhaps introduce yourself first, and then Helen, if you follow her.
Yes, thanks, Sarah. Nice welcome to everybody. My role at the Royal Opera House is essentially everything that happens outside of the building, but really it's around engaging communities, schools, children, young people in our art forms, and making sure that they can consume it, they can take part in it, and they can appreciate it, and really ensuring that we have public value across the whole nation. So I kind of lead on a range of different projects and training with school teachers, community engagement projects, both online and physical. Is that enough information, Sarah?
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you introduced yourself. Helen, would you mind going next?
Sure. Hello. So I'm Helen. Yep, I work at the Hall for Cornwall, and my role there, I sort of have three different hats, all in my job. So I look after all the youth and community work that we do. So we have 12 youth companies that run that feature dance or musical theatre and theatre. I also do all of the schools programmes and all of our kind of in-school activity as well. I'm also lucky enough to work with 14 associate artists, so we have a wide offer for support for creative professionals who are on our associate artist programme. And then more recently, a slightly new area for me, which is interesting in terms of culture, has been our heritage programme. So the Hall for Cornwall is currently in a redevelopment phase, so we've been closed for just over 2 years to rebuild the auditorium into 3 tiers. So it's going to be a really big, beautiful theatrical space, and I'm overseeing the heritage side of that work, which has been really interesting. So looking at interpretation and things that might go back in the building that help tell the story of the 175 years of where the building's been, because it was a fire station, a jail, and all kinds of amazing things. So looking at how we explore that creatively.
Fantastic, awesome. And Chloe, I know that you've also got a newly reopened museum, so do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Chloe Hughes. I'm the Engagement Programmes Manager at the Box, and the Box is Plymouth's newest cultural destination for the city. So it's a museum, a gallery and an archive. Many people know it as the former Plymouth City Museum and Art Gallery. And I always describe my job as the best job to have at the Box, because my job's all about the people. So it includes our work that we offer for families, our work with schools, our work with young people, our work with communities and communities who may not typically access and engage with institutions such as museums, galleries and archives, and volunteers as well as getting to dabble within a range of our public programming. So anything that is about people connecting with culture kind of sits under my team.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So together in the next hour, we're going to try and explore the idea of culture, which I already know is almost impossible, but we'll do our best. And the idea of what we're going to do in the next hour is really, it's a bit like a conversation. So it's not that we have all the knowledge and we're going to impart it. It's a conversation between us to allow you to also think a little bit more deeply. So broadly, we're going to have 3 themes across our conversation. So what is it that we mean by culture? What does it look like and feel like in the context of schools? Because as part of Educating Differently, we know that what we're wanting to do is really engage with schools differently. What things have we experienced that have made a difference to schools in terms of how they can value culture as part of their toolkit? And then, given the challenges that we're all facing imminently, what do we need to think about at the moment? Things that need our attention or perhaps our care as we move forward into this slightly perilous and uncharted sea. So just to say, we're going to begin with something that is about the question function at the bottom. If you want to ask a question or want to share something with us, then let us know. There's a function bar at the bottom of the toolbar, and we'll do our best to answer those questions towards the end of the webinar. So just to start us all off, because I know we're all feeling slightly nervous around how this might work, but just to sort of say, what, if they can remember, was their own most significant memory or moment that they recall about engaging with culture in its broadest sense? And I'll share mine, which is that I remember as a kid in Sheffield sitting in the Crucible Theatre with this amazing ceiling, which was what I thought was full of stars, and that moment when the lights go down and the stars fade, and that kind of gentle warmth and darkness that fills the whole auditorium and filled my tummy, and that sense of magic that was something was going to happen. And that was me hooked completely. That was me in terms of understanding what arts and culture could do within my life. So Helen, I'm gonna pick on you and ask you to go first. What do you think in terms of your significant memory?
Do you know, it's a brilliant question, because I've got a few, and actually trying to pick the one that I think had the most impact is really interesting. And weirdly, it's connected to Hove Cornwall, which is nice because that's obviously where I work now. So there's a nice little story there. But actually, we had for anyone who remembers or knows Transitions Dance Company, it's a graduate dance company from Laban, and they were brilliant. And they came to my school. I went to school in Camelford, which is, you know, a small town, a small place in North Cornwall. And they came into my school and did a show in my school hall. And it was amazing. It was one of the best things I'd ever seen. And then I convinced my parents to drive me to Truro to see the same show at Hove Cornwall, but it was called City Hall then. And I saw it on a bigger stage, and I saw it in a bigger venue, and I saw it and it just was that thing. I was like, they've been into my school and I've seen it, and I've seen them when I was this close, and now I've seen it on a stage where it was lit differently and it kind of looked really different. And it just made me think, that's what I want to do. I want to do that.
That's completely brilliant. And I absolutely understand that feeling. It is so powerful when you're actually there in the same space as somebody and you feel like, you know, that they're a real person. It's not something you're completely disconnected from. Whereas, you know, at the moment, what we're all desperately feeling is this disconnection possibly around screens, but that moment of actually being in real life with somebody is quite astonishing. So Chloe, can I ask you, what was your first moment or memory?
Yeah, this is feels a really tricky one to answer, because like Helen, there are a number of different occasions where you may have experienced something or felt something that's particularly struck you. I think when I was reflecting on this, I found it too difficult to kind of pick down to any one moment. And I think sometimes this is our danger, I think, within the cultural sector, that often there isn't a kind of eureka moment. I think culture is around us all, you know, from the very moment we're born. You know, turn on the radio, turn on the television, and there's something around you, and you're connecting with it in a way that makes meaning to you. So I'm going to disappoint you, Sarah, because I couldn't pick down to one thing, but when I thought about things, I was thinking about how many occasions there have been that have crossed those kind of traditional cultural divides. So whether that's been about having an amazing experience in a theatre, similar to what you've described, or dance, as Helen's spoken about, or within the heritage and museum sector as well, seeing something that really speaks to you at a visceral level. I think it's a universality, isn't it? But for me, it's been more about that drip, drip, drip of so many different experiences that come together.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Amy.
How do I top those three? That's really difficult. Yeah, there are so many memories that I have, but I suppose the one that really stands out is the moment where there was a real pivot, and it wasn't just about, well, the arts or culture is all around me. It was a connection with, this is something viable that I could actually do. What a job could be something that you enjoy. So I was dancing in Rotherham in South Yorkshire, quite late starter, doing kind of normal ballet, tap, modern, bit of ballroom, bit of cha-cha-cha on a Saturday morning, and I just thought it was a hobby. And then I was taken to see Northern Ballet at Sheffield Lyceum, and I watched this performance of Dracula, expecting tutus and men in tights, all of those kind of perceptions that you might have of ballet. And what I experienced was this huge amount of drama and emotion on the stage. And the style of dance wasn't really something that I expected from a ballet company. It was something so raw and so it connected to me on such a deep level. And I thought, my goodness, those performers are just giving it absolutely everything. And I remember even as a sort of young teenager thinking how emotional that made me feel. And it was the power of storytelling through their bodies. And I got it. I could really connect with it. And I thought, sometimes I'd seen ballet maybe on television, and it felt quite abstract. And I was amazed by the lines and about how many pirouettes they did, but not necessarily connecting with the storytelling. And around the same time, I think I was around year 8 or year 9, and I had my careers advice session pre taking my options. And I said to the careers advisor, asked me sort of the subjects that I excelled in, the things that I enjoyed. And I said, I think I want to be a dancer. And the careers advisor said, sort of almost spat out her tea and said, but you're quite intelligent. You're going to do really well in your GCSEs. Why have a backup plan? Yeah, that's a really nice idea. And I thought, how can I pursue? And I think obviously I was given the option of a teacher, which I think is a hugely inspirational role. But I was given some kind of almost like a tick box list of things that I might go on to do. And there was a clear ceiling on aspiration of what I could achieve, that was clearly something so far removed of something that would be possible for me in the secondary school that I went to. And it was a moment where the penny dropped, and I just realised, I want to be successful. And to do that, how can I do something if I don't enjoy it? For me as a teenager, I really had to be connected and believe in something and enjoy it to be motivated. And I was okay academically, but I wasn't particularly motivated. And I did okay without particularly trying, but I wasn't motivated. But at the point in which I realized that, and I asked a few people, and they helped navigate me in terms of how I might take options by going to a college that was about 2 hours away on 4 different buses to get there. And I did that, but actually all day, every day, learning wasn't quite the same as it had been pre-16, because it was something that I enjoyed and I really loved. So I think that's the moment that really stood out to me. And I still think about that careers advisor right now, and I want to go, told you, look.
That's quite, actually, I remember my careers advisor. I think I got postman down because when I did my tick boxes, I enjoyed the outdoors, and I quite liked the sort of max that they weared, and helping people. Postman. We'll come back to this, ladies, later.
And this is what makes me so cross and frustrated about Fatima having to retrain. Absolutely, it's really important for us to not have that ceiling on young people in terms of what they feel that they enjoy, and how we might help them say, well, actually, how do we make a career out of this? I mean, never have we been, now in the 21st century where, huge amounts of those jobs that those young people have gone to haven't been invented yet. They're not created, they're not there, there isn't a tick box. It's for us to support them to reimagine and imagine what their future might be. So and that's why I think, like you, Helen, I did go on and do some performing in the early part of my career after training to be a dancer, but nothing quite gave the same back as the work that I did with children and young people to make them realise and all those the transformative power that dance and arts projects can have in schools. So that's what why I still believe and do what I do and really feel passionate about it right now.
Brilliant. And I think that's why collectively this is an important conversation to have and share with schools and share with teachers, because it is something that certainly shaped us and shaped our experiences, but sometimes those things seem to be able to happen by chance, and that's not right. It's not, this is about social justice in terms of access to arts and to culture. So I think one of the things that we've also got in the background of this is that Ofsted have included cultural capital as part of its inspection framework, and in terms of cultural capital, it's about I'm just going to read to you on my little slide over here that it's about a part of making the judgment about the quality of education. Inspectors will consider the extent to which schools are equipping pupils with the knowledge and cultural capital that they need to succeed in life. Ofsted's understanding of this knowledge and cultural capital matches that found in the aims of the national curriculum. So it's essential knowledge that pupils need to be educated citizens, introducing them to the best that has been thought and said, and helping to engender an appreciation of human creativity and achievement. So this is something that is now absolutely within a framework for schools to be able to work towards, and show that they have an understanding of this. And I think it's something that is quite confusing. It's understanding, what do we mean by cultural capital? What does that actually look and feel like in the context of my school or my community? And I think it's this thing about legitimate culture for me, which is, what do we mean by that? We can be creative and confident about what we're doing, but it's this being able to have kind of consume things, and I think it's also about understanding that this is about making informed decisions about participating and articulating that this, doing this has a value. And I think this is why really this conversation is about opening up what we mean by it, to share that with other educators, because it can be quite contentious, but it's also something that is absolutely, we can grasp this, we can use this to empower experiences that other children and young people can have. So Chloe, if I can start with you, I'm sure this is it's a hugely significant part of the journey that you've been on in the last few years, and particularly in the context of opening the museum, which is, given the times that we're in, is quite fractious. Amazing to have achieved that. So I'm going to ask the first question of you. What does culture mean to you in terms of what does it look like and what does it feel like in its broader sense?
So to me, it's about connecting with your identity in some way, shape or form. And I think there are so many different, they almost become communities of culture within the work we do. So I think about, I've been involved in the past within various dance and theatre workers before I kind of moved within museums and heritage. And you see within each sector that collection of, particularly when you're working with young people, that sense of kind of understanding, grappling with their identity, and that sense of trying to make sense of the world through something that they're really passionate about. So that's what it feels like to me. And I was just thinking about your comments then, and what culture looks like and feels like, particularly within schools and arts settings. And for me, I think it's about making sure you've got the balance. So the balance on the one hand to inspire children and young people, to give them those jaw-dropping, that's amazing moments, those moments that we've talked about at the start that inspire them to to be really, even if they don't know where they want to go, they know they want to do something, and their blood's racing as a result of this. But I think it's also about balancing that with opportunities for co-production and creation, because actually no artist makes any work without making a lot of failures first. And I think actually that's the work that we need to be supporting as cultural settings, supporting children and young people to be creative, to learn, to keep trying new things and experimenting, and finding that space for experimentation, which is really hard to carve out space for.
Fantastic, thank you. And so, Amy, I mean, in the context of, I mean, it's quite interesting, as the Royal Opera House as well, it's sort of the context that you come from. It's, what does that look and feel like from where you are?
Well, gosh, it's really difficult. I mean, I suppose in the first response to your question around culture and what it means to me, I mean, Chloe, everything that you said, these are the things that I thought about when you mentioned this question, Sarah. It's about connection, it's about identity, and it's about purpose and your place in the world. And so it's broad and it's big, but then it's about bringing back into the now, and actually what change, what difference can you make, and how do you interact with those things immediately in your vicinity, the sort of what is in your sphere of influence, and what role does arts and culture play in your place in the world. I mean, the thing in terms of one of the issues that obviously I have in my role, I mean, for those of you that don't know the work of the Royal Opera House, it's a house of two companies, the Royal Ballet and the Royal Opera. But for me, it's really important that there's a perception of those art forms within culture, and how the elitism of those art forms. So I think for me, it's really important that we break down the word culture and the word art into a really easy, digestible way for the audience that you're talking to, and really important that everybody feels that they're empowered, that that culture has something for them that is relevant to them, that it has a place in the world. And I think it's about providing choices, that culture provides, opportunities to take part, to consume, to observe. But most importantly, I think my objective in my role in terms of culture and the wider community and the nation accessing culture is that it's about choice. And it's about relevance. And even if you don't want to take part, or if you don't want to consume, or you don't want to observe the work, it's about saying it's of value and it's relevant. And I think it's really important that everybody feels that arts and culture is relevant to them and in their lives, even if they don't choose to take part in a traditional way. If that makes sense.
Okay, it's such a huge thing to be able to start to break down, and I think you're right. There's our perceptions of something, and then trying to really pull into that and really take it apart to say, well, what do we actually mean in terms of culture with big C's, culture with small C's, and actually bringing it down to what's important to you, what resonates with you. So Helen, I mean, it's always hard going last, isn't it? I promise I'm going to rotate it so you don't have to.
Yeah, it's all good. I was just saying, it's like everything everybody said, I totally agree with. Just to add on to it, really, I think I just made some notes, because I was saying, like, culture's everything. Culture's everything. It's like that Fatima advert, or that campaign was just kind of the thing the things that I loved after that were the thing just going, okay, but look, this is designed. That's a font type that's done this. It's a photographer took this photo. It's a costume designer has designed it. I just thought, oh my goodness, it's like it is everything. It's everywhere. And I'm really interested in people who don't think culture is for them, because I think that it's just the way we talk about it, and it's the way that we our perception of culture. I had a conversation with somebody brilliant the other day. So no, I don't like culture. Oh, I love festivals. I go to all these festivals. I'm like, okay, so what do you think a festival is then? Because for me, a festival is all about music and dance and experience. That is culture. That is what we're talking about. But it's language. It's kind of and then I thought it sort of ties on a little bit to the careers advisor as well, because I basically lied to my careers advisor, because I felt like saying words like culture or art or dancer or pop star. You know, actually, I really wanted to be a pop star, but I couldn't say anything like that because it was too embarrassing, and I felt like I was showing off, or I felt like I was being too loud and being too ambitious, or you know. But actually, I had a really brilliant, rich cultural upbringing. You know, my dad was a conductor. I was around music for years since I was a tiny baby, so actually that was really normal. And then actually, when you're faced with somebody who thinks about culture differently, or might try and make you feel that the culture you're talking about isn't right for you, you know. And I think for the work we do with young people and with schools, that's what we need, to make people brave. We need to make people really secure in themselves, that they can stand up and say, I am going to be this and this. And then, like Chloe said, we find the mechanisms to make that possible for them to do all of those things. So yeah, I think you'd be hard put. We need to find a better word. I think culture is an unhelpful word, because it's been used in some. I don't know. I'm not. There isn't an answer to that, but I just think we need to come up with a word that is universally okay to say about the cool things that we like and love.
It feels quite hierarchical. It feels like a bit high art. Culture is something that somebody else does who's not you necessarily, and it all depends on your upbringing, your environment, and the situation in terms of expectation and what is acceptable or what you should be doing or taking part in. And I think it depends on the children, young people, and their age in terms of, I think you're right, Helen, it's about language and rhetoric that we use and making it appropriate for the audience that we're talking to. But it's really okay to ask them, what do the arts mean to you? I think that point about breaking down what you're seeing constantly in everyday life, I mean, even going back to sort of curriculum subjects like creativity, arts, culture is in everything that we're teaching constantly, and it's not, you know, for the reserve of your dance lessons or your music lessons. And I think that's really important. But culture is a very difficult term. You know, it could be food, it could be music, it could be heritage. Yeah, it's a very difficult one. It's like, what is contemporary dance?
We could probably show you, but not tell you. It's a very difficult subject to grasp, but you know, thank you all for that. There's a lot that's certainly throwing, you know, questions up in my mind around, you know, the cultures of places, and you know, a shift from local to national to international, and so I think, you know, that it's something that if we can just start that awareness really around the fact that we can value the small stuff. It isn't about the hierarchical nature of it. It is absolutely what happens on your street, what might happen in the house next door, it might be happening in your village. It can be very, very small. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It can be.
Can I just say something quite controversial, Sarah, actually, what I feel that it's not? It absolutely isn't, for me, the best that has been thought and said. I really feel quite strongly about that, and you know, it kind of takes it back to a period in time where you go, actually, what is the high art? Who are the people, the famous, you know? And that it's about understanding those people, a person back in time that doesn't have a relevance to who you are right here and right now. And Chloe talking about, I think you said about risk and about creativity. That's what creativity is. It's about taking risks. It's about innovation. It's about not succeeding, it not quite working all the time. That is culture. It's not necessarily the ones that are famous who made it the best that's been seen, thought, and said. But I could get on my soapbox about that line.
I'm very happy to have soapboxes, and we like a little controversy here, so that's absolutely fine. I'm sure you're not on your own, and I think it's that thing about it not being static. You know, it's that thing about it is absolutely happening around us as we create each day, that, you know, it is moving with us. So if I can just bring it back to schools and that idea around actually, you know, valuing what is in cultural capital. It is such a difficult thing to try and get your head around, really, in terms of how you translate that within a curriculum. How do you translate that within something that has got a resonance within school? What is it that perhaps you, in your experiences, and it could be in the jobs that you're in now, it could be from other jobs that you have done or other things that has made the difference to schools to really understand that value, the experiences that they've had that make them say, yes, this is absolutely part of our toolkit. So this has changed the culture of our school. How has that moved us on in terms of some of those experiences that you may have been part of or know of? And so, Amy, if I can ask you to start with that one, you know, controversy, here we go, but you know, just things that you think have actually made that difference.
There's a few things. The things that I think make a real difference is I really enjoy convincing the unconvinced. So how do we get those schools to open the doors? And I'm sure these schools they're everywhere, and I'm not kind of pointing any fingers, because clearly the people that are here today are the ones that say yes and believe in this stuff. But I think I feel quite strongly that we have a duty in terms of the scale of our organisation around advocacy, is that we don't just go for the low-hanging fruit. So we have a free national program of there's 3 different programs that are, you know, aligned to our art forms, which is around singing, dancing and making, with all the work that we do around sets and costumes. We have a production park out in Purfleet in Thurrock, outside of London. But I think it's really important that when we work in local areas, so if I was coming down to the southwest and saying, actually, which schools really engage in the arts? Where's the rich cultural offers? Okay, where isn't there a rich cultural offer? It's about equity. You know, it's really important that all children have access to rich and diverse experiences. So that's one thing. It's around trying to kind of open those doors to those schools, you know, because, you know, leaders, quite often the gatekeepers, even the most kind of keen, inspired teachers have to be able to navigate the powers that be to sign off any activity or any budget spend or any time off or cover or supply. So I think that's where there's some transformational practice, is where schools have been convinced otherwise. And I think the way in which they're quite often convinced otherwise is the importance of celebrating impact and the success of practice that's happening. So not taking our eye off the ball about, okay, that's a great project, look at how much those teachers got out of that experience, look how much those children got out of that experience. And it could be a real influential moment in a child or a teacher's practice. And I think that's really important. It's not forgetting the teachers actually in these whole experiences. It's not just about the children. It's really important to nourish teachers. But that importance of celebrating, to shine a spotlight, to say, actually, look at what they did, look at the difference that it made. You know, being really clear about what you hope to achieve and the difference you make, and going, yes, we did that, but what mistakes did we make? What have we learned from that? And then also the unexpected outcomes of projects. So all around kind of evaluation, but celebration as well as evaluation, I think is really influential in terms of schools' practice, and also being quite thoughtful and relevant. So the arts have quite often struggled in terms of getting into schools and practice and justifying their place. And I think, you know, the curriculum's really squeezed, you know, squeezed even more when you've got huge amounts of hand washing and bubbles. You know, there's less time to deliver practice. So making sure that work is co-designed where possible, or that we're being really clear about the value of it and the difference that it will make. And sometimes just playing the game. I talked about the tick box earlier, but saying, actually, how does this translate directly to school improvement priorities, or how does it link clearly to the curriculum? And that might not necessarily be the arts curriculum, but how can the arts, in terms of economies of scale, not just deliver your arts curriculum, for example, if you've got a visiting artist coming into school, but how can it meet all of these other needs across the school? So being really thoughtful about the practice, the way you present it, and then the way you celebrate it, I think is keen. And then having good advocates, unexpected advocates. I've got a great burly rugby player teacher that I roll out when I'm ever talking about our dance programs in schools, who says, you know, I didn't think dance was for me, and now it's my favourite subject to teach in school. They're the people that kind of change, you know, open those doors to those unconvinced schools.
Absolutely, they end up being your best advocates, don't they? The ones that see themselves in the least being part of that picture suddenly see themselves in that picture. And I think that has got a huge transformational effect within a school or within a staff. It can be quite exceptional. So Helen, I know that you've probably got lots of these experiences that you would like to share in terms of schools and that toolkit and the valuing that schools have around working with culture in the broadest sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like that thing about convincing the people who aren't convinced as well. One of my favourite moments was, and everyone should remain nameless just in case, because that might be a school that I've worked with, but just somebody sort of sitting back and just saying, well, you'll never get my year 5 boys dancing. It's just not going to happen. And the minute anybody says anything like that, I'm like, oh, yes, I will, and they will surprise you and you will surprise them, and it will be brilliant and we will love it, and it will, you know, and sure enough, it's like you just have to find the right thing, and whether that's music or a prop or whatever. And it's about that value within the school then, isn't it, and how you support the whole thing and how you nurture all of those different elements to kind of make it, and then at the end of the end of the day you kind of go, oh, we did make a 4-minute dance there, didn't we? And we're going to do it in the playground now so that everybody sees it and that everybody gets to see and celebrate you. And I think that there's lots of things like that. One school that really sticks in my mind for such a positive reason was just the kind of the entire staff team. It's like the entire staff team just had this amazing kind of collective shift where everybody recognised the impact and the value on what was happening for the young people and for themselves, and it just made such a huge difference to the school. So I've been doing quite a lot of intensive work with them on different kind of areas of the curriculum and performance work, and I came in and there was a real palpable kind of, like, all the kids were really giggly but really quiet, so it was sort of weird, and I put my bag down and I was ready to kind of start the session, and you could see that something was going on but they hadn't quite, and then they put the music on, and they and their teacher had made a performance for me. And 6 weeks ago it was an unheard of thing. It's like, oh, I'm not teaching this, I can't do that, this is not my thing. And it was really, it was just a really wonderful moment that kind of when you see it happen and when you feel it, it kind of the value that a school places on culture, just it helps with all aspects of school life, right down to how you stand in the dinner queue, to how you how drop off or collection it. I think there's been some it's a really rambly answer, sorry, but it was really lovely. Then preparing a dance for me was brilliant, and it made me think that actually what we've done or what we can do is just really prepare young people and the brilliant people who work with them with all the skills that you need to do anything. So actually, even if it's not a subject that you're confident with or something that you think is not necessarily your find a bit of it you like. So actually, one of the key thing with that is talking to the teacher. She was saying, oh, I wouldn't know where to find the music, and I was like, well, what do you listen to? What CD have you got in your car? And she kind of said, and I was like, use that. That'd be great. Talk to the kids about why you like it, and and just anything that you can kind of remembering that it is about small wins that lead on to bigger things.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting what you were saying there about standing in the dinner queue. It takes me back to a project many years ago where there had been a kind of dance program within the school, and out of that came a significant reduction in accidents in the playground, so that the head teacher said, what I've noticed is that I don't spend the first 20 minutes of the lessons after lunchtime dealing with children who've either pushed somebody over or they've bumped into somebody, and there's been this series of disasters. So we've actually gained about 20 minutes of really good quality settling in and teaching time the minute that they get back into the classroom, and that was down to spatial awareness. It was about how you work with contact, how it is you interact with people, how you work in partnerships with one another. And that was the thing about the culture of a school, which actually shifts it away from being, oh, it's the arts and it's in this silo, but actually how does that start to influence, as Amy was saying, the kind of bigger school improvement things around what is it that we want for the culture of our school. And I think it's sort of engaging with some of those qualities as human beings, and that is absolutely something that we possibly just take for granted in terms of how we work within a particular sector, but it's something that absolutely are those transferable things that make the difference to 20 minutes of time that's lost dealing with things on a daily basis. So Chloe, I'm going to turn to you as a final one in terms of things that you think have made a difference to schools to start to really engage with it in a meaningful way for them.
I think listening to Amy and Helen reflect on that, it was just making me think a little bit about why we do the work that we do. Why do we have a schools programme? Because particularly, as everyone's alluded to, with the challenges that we're in 2020, it's becoming increasingly hard, I know, for teachers and schools to sometimes get out and engage with cultural institutions, and for us to be able to get into schools as well. I'm going to put aside the fact that a cultural education should be part of every child's experience growing up, because I know I'm preaching to the choir on that, but I think there's also something really important about equity and access. And we all talked about those moments that sparked for us as young people an interest and a love of culture, and despite our kind of various backgrounds, in some way there was probably someone championing music or dance or whatever it was that kind of connected for us in some way, shape or form. But not all children get that. And actually, I think our work in schools is some of the most powerful work in terms of social justice issues and how we can reach all children and young people, regardless of whether a trip to a museum or to the opera or to a dance is something that they would actually typically do within their home life. And I think the other thing for me is about feeding our creative practice. So I can't overestimate how important children and young people are to our cultural practice. And I think any institution or organisation that isn't responding and very actively feeding upon those experiences of working in schools, that is what grows our creative practice. This isn't a one-way, us kind of standing here and talking. This is about something that's a dialogue between us and children and young people, but also with teachers. So our new schools programme that we're running at the Box has been entirely developed in co-produced with our teacher ambassador network. And I think the kind of key learning for me, amongst all the projects, and I'm sure we can all remember brilliant projects that have gone fantastically well, and then of course I'm sure we've all been involved in those projects which maybe it wasn't the best thing we've ever delivered, if we're truly honest. And I think when you look at what are the kind of factors in that the element of partnership working, the element of the teacher helping and leading and knowing those children and young people who they're working with day in, day out. We operate in a very privileged position often, where we fly in for a day or a week or the length of a few months over a project, but often our relationship is finite. Whereas the teachers have that relationship, they have that broader context and that depth of understanding in terms of children and young people's learning. And so for me, that's the ultimate difference about how can we as cultural organisations really genuinely and truly work in partnership with teachers, and how do we do it in a way that is fun and joyful and light and doesn't add extra administration to everyone's lives, but actually really enhances the experience. I think that's the kind of golden point that we're all trying to head for, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, Helen, off you go.
Hand up, sorry. I was just, something you just said, Chloe, then about time. Well, it's something I should have mentioned, because actually the school that I'm thinking of in my example, it was actually a conversation with the head teacher, who said, where we were designing the project and we were talking about how it might work. And then we both just had a moment of going, we absolutely could do 20-minute sessions with every single class in the school. I'm really happy to do that. But what you will get is everybody having a 20-minute something. I could do 6 days with one class, and it will be a very, very different experience. So I think it's worth schools and arts organisations thinking about what kind of offers we can do and why, because
it's the depth, isn't it?
Yeah, some people, a 20-minute quick, we're going to do this, is all they need to go, yes, that's great, I'm in, everything's brilliant. And other people, it's like, no, we need to do some really, really deep work and make that a different offer.
Amy? Yeah, absolutely.
And I think to your point there, Helen, as well, that's where there isn't a one size fits all, is there? It's about looking at the range of experiences that might be on offer, but also seeking a diverse range yourself as a school and looking for those opportunities, and it may be a local organisation, an independent artist, or looking to some of the big nationals like us that work across the UK, and saying, actually, what we have is this way of working at the moment. We've got the inspirational artist coming in delivering an intensive project, or somebody that delivers dance across every single year group. But then the model that we've decided to go for, so we do have that reach, we might not be sending the individual artist in and having that depth, is about investing in really high quality teacher CPD. So the specialist and the generalist teacher, which I think is so important in primary, those role models can deliver arts curriculum with confidence and have those facilitation skills to still be inspiring, to not feel concerned or worried, so that they kind of are easily distracted and say, oh, actually, we haven't got the hall, so maybe we don't do our dance lesson today. So we give them, we invest in a teacher CPD model. So I think it's a wide range of opportunities and ways of working with your school community to make sure there's different ways of your pupils accessing the arts, and that's why our model is around investing in teachers, because they are the ones that's then the legacy, that's the sustainable. So that teacher will then go on with the confidence and the skills and the toolkit to continue to inspire cohort and cohort after cohort of students, and that's how we can ensure reach. But that doesn't take away from the model that Helen was delivering in the school or the way that Chloe might be working at the box. It's about having a rich and diverse, lots and lots and lots of experiences, as many as you can possibly fit into the curriculum.
Absolutely, and I think it's interesting. You know, I've been working in this field for a fair few years now, and I always get completely amazed at somebody who I've either met as a young person who's participated in something, who then has gone on to train to be a teacher, who then has ended up as a senior leader within a school, and I'm not quite that old yet, but you know, has ended up as a head teacher, somebody who has influenced, and for me, it's that thing about the culture of that school. It's sort of not just having your arts week where you wheel it in for a week and then it's wheeled out, or a day, and it's something that permeates through to an approach which is about how you open up that concept of what is the culture of that place, what do we mean that resonates with us. And I think that's something that, you know, those are the things, if you're investing in those people to have those transformative experiences, to be those role models, to say, yes, it isn't just about, you know, I think once Helen, I think you and I discovered it was cheaper to get children from I think it was Camelford to New York, or no, Paris, I think it was, or something like that, than it was to get them to the Hall for Cornwall. And it was sort of, what are the things that are restricting it? So why can't you think about what's on your doorstep? How do you value the culture of your place? So I think it's sort of understanding that for schools, there are lots of doors. There are lots of doors that they can go through to encourage young people to step through. So thank you all so much for that. That's brilliant. Okay, we finally got to our last question, actually, which you know, we've probably got a little bit of time to talk about this, but you know, given the challenges that we're all facing, which are not insignificant at the moment, what is it that you think needs our attention or care as we move forwards? And you know, I'm very conscious that tomorrow things will change in terms of going into another national lockdown. And what is it that we want to take care of, given where we're all journeying at the moment? So Helen, if I can start with you, in terms of, for culture, what is it that needs our attention and care moving forward?
I think we need to be really mindful and really careful about how we talk about it and how we make the case for it, because whilst people are genuinely struggling for food and for shelter and for, you know, basic necessity, for looking after people, and you know, I think whilst there is a real immediate need and a really real really, you know, really difficult things that a lot of people are facing, I think we need to be really careful about how we and mindful about how we also talk about what we do and how culture affects people's mental health, and how we can play our part in recovery and support and nurture and resilience and braveness, and all of those, braveness, is that a word? Being brave. But you know, all of those things is yeah, and not pit ourselves against each other. So it's not about saying do this or this. It's like, oh, if you need this, maybe we could look at it in this way. If this is what you need, maybe we can get there like that. You know, I think there's been a huge thing, particularly in the arts at the moment, with you know, lots of people talking about grants that are available, or things that, you know, things that might become we're in real danger of being in a really competitive environment. And actually, for me right now, the thing we need to be most mindful of is being not competitive and being supportive and looking at the bigger picture and where we can plug things in that will genuinely help.
Thank you. And Chloe, I mean, there's been quite a lot of controversy and things that have been happening internationally, nationally, within your sector, but also, you know, it's also, as Helen's saying, around kind of well-being, and we're aware that there's lots of things that can happen that can help people, given that we're in this very strange place. What do you think about that at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'd absolutely echo everything that Helen has just said. I think for me, and perhaps, you know, particularly being within a museum and gallery and archive, and the questions around culture and identity, and the sense of using museums and heritage to make sense of the world around you and ask really big questions of the world around you is where we need to play and where we need to be. And I think, you know, seismic events of 2020 and this next generation that are coming through, I'm so in awe so often of their activism and their passion and their commitment to making the world a better place than perhaps we've made it so far. I'm just thinking, for example, around Black Lives Matter, but also around the climate emergency as well. So I think increasingly using the arts and culture for young people to have their say and give them a greater voice, and particularly given the challenges, you know, for school leavers at the moment, and for young people who are going to increasingly kind of come out into this new world that the pandemic will have shaped for us, with all the challenges around work and jobs, mental health, etc. That feels to me even more potent and important. And I think for all cultural organisations, I think we've got a challenge, which is how much power are we giving to young people? How much are we kind of throwing over and saying to them, let's hear what you think? How are we facilitating that? Because I think that's where we need to really where we need to be. And I think it's about embedding and creating a culture of culture. And that doesn't have to be in big, massive, huge ways. I was thinking a lot about some of the work that I'd been doing previously with fun palaces, which, if people aren't aware of fun palaces, you can check that out, funpalaces.co.uk. But it's about culture in the heart of community and community at the heart of culture. And it's about completely getting rid of the ideas of a hierarchy, of a highbrow and a kind of lesser versions of culture. It's about what is meaningful to people in their own place, in their own environment, and in ways in which they can have fun and connect and help learn and understand more about the communities and the world that they're in.
Fantastic. That's really, really powerful stuff, actually. And check out Fun Palaces. I'm Ruby, who is our producer in the background. I'm sure in a minute we'll get that up in our chat box, and you can follow that link. So Amy, in our final few moments, just in terms of, you know, attention and care for what happens next.
Well, maybe sort of, I did have a few things, but you've
Let's
covered
go for it.
some of them. But now I'm going to improvise. Is from what you've just said, Chloe, in terms of the work that Fun Palaces do, which is absolutely fantastic. I think that idea about us as kind of potentially the adults, sometimes making choices on behalf of the children and what we feel is of value to them. So I'm thinking now about curriculum, I'm thinking about creative opportunities in terms of senior leaders and head teachers, how you spend your budget, who you bring in, what's safe, what's not safe, is about making sure that you don't make those decisions with your own bias and putting parameters around those opportunities. You know, is it popular culture that you're into, and therefore you look for those opportunities for your kids because that's what you're into? Is it classical music? Quite often, in terms of the work that we do, is it around the perception of what opera and ballet might be, and that might not be something that the children of your school are into, or the community actually, but is dance is singing as part of everybody's lives something that they might be into, and then kind of providing really rich and really diverse opportunities and experience to not say, actually, that's the trajectory you need to go on. It's these set of experiences that are right for you, and I'm going to make those decisions on your behalf. Some of it is around giving children, young people, their families agency to make those choices. But sometimes there's a very limited menu of what they know those choices to be. So it's really important you give them loads of different ingredients, spices, you know, lots of different food from across the world, and in terms of art and experiences from across the world that's really diverse. Some they'll like, some they'll not like, but some might really be for them. And it might be, you know, that experience that I had with that careers advice. I ended up doing what I was doing despite what everybody said I could and should do, not because they did that. So it's really important we are not those gatekeepers in those young people's lives, that we do say, experience things, make your own choices, but actually it isn't for anybody to say what you can and can't do. And then finally, I think in terms of those really influential people in children and young people's lives, is invest in our teachers, nourish them, give them creative opportunities as well. It isn't just about them servicing the needs of their children. They are individuals. They're part of our education community. They are so influential in a child's life. So make sure we're providing wonderful opportunities for them and caring for them. I think that's never been as important. I think that was my improv.
That's incredibly powerful, actually, given that I'm sure we're all feeling that fatigue at the moment in terms of moving through into the next phases, and none so more than our teachers at the moment in terms of what they've been delivering over the last few months and continue to do so with such incredible power, really. And I think it's something that, you know, as cultural organisations, we can be mindful of what it is that we can do to help nurture creativity of teachers and things in terms of their own well-being. So that's possibly something that I'm going to take back to Real Ideas around what it is that we can do that helps to facilitate that, and we'll try and share some of those experiences that are possibly, you know, broader nationally, that people can participate in over the next few weeks and months, really. So and I think I'm going to say thank you to everybody. We've not actually had very many questions come through, so it's just been a joy to talk to all of you over the last hour. I can't believe it's been an hour, it's gone so quickly. But you know, there's various links within our chat boxes in terms of following up any of the organisations that are represented here today. And you know, just to say that if there are things that you want to ask, or you feel that we haven't covered today, then drop me a line at Real Ideas. As you're all now Real Ideas members, by signing up to be part of this panel, you know, this webinar, you will get first shouts on terms of what's happening in terms of what we're doing next and our ideas in the future. So thank you hugely to Helen and to Amy and to Chloe, and stay safe and take care in the next few months, and I look forward to seeing what you're all doing to help our amazing young people in the next part of this incredible journey. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.